Well, I've finished my base plates for project number 5 for the lingualized occlusion setup. To review, I've stayed away from the Freedom attachments. I've cut out the anterior undercuts, stayed away from any sharp bony spicules, and then I'm now going to create my occlusion rims. Naturally, we've poured the preliminary impressions. We made the custom trays. The custom trays went back for border molded impression. We poured the models. And now I'm going to go ahead and fabricate the occlusion rims. Now, there's many ways to make the occlusion rim. Everyone has an idea of what the final product should look like. And this is just one version of what I would do and what would be my expectation as a practitioner from the occlusion rim. I've soaked the model in water. I tried to stay away from using any separator, as that will create some space. I've taken off the Vaseline from the base plate, which was primarily only in the area of where the base plate is. I didn't put Vaseline down in the sulcus area. Then from soaking the model, I can flow hot base plate wax all the way down into the vestibule area, most likely overextending it if the impression is overextended, but creating a nice land area in wax that I will go and relieve and restore with my number 7 knife and shape the extensions of the base plate. So I'll do this in real time instead of having time-lapsed camera. Now, naturally, one of the first occupations in the laboratory would be in maybe the plaster department, which is very important, or making custom trays and occlusion rims, as they're time-consuming. I mean, there's preformed wax patterns I've seen people use for the base plate wax. But just be aware that some of those preformed wax patterns are very soft and may not withstand the 3 registrations that I need, which would be face bow, protrusive bite record, and centric relation record. As well as that soft wax may be used for Dr. Oleg's conventional bite registration record, which would be the 0-degree mono setup, 0-degree teeth, where they would use a soft wax interocclusally to create a compensating curve during the patient's function, which would replicate the condylar guidance and protrusive movements and lateral excursive movements. That soft wax is used for such a technique, and the dentist may use that wax for the 0-degree setup denture philosophy, which is nothing wrong with that, but as a dental technician, we need to be aware of what these materials are used for and when we would use them. Sometimes we take the material saying, oh, this is easier, so let's use it. But really, it was made for something else. That wax is too soft to be used for centric relation record, labial contour, buccal corridor, face bow, like I said, protrusive and centric relation record. So, as you can see here, I'm flowing very hot molten wax from my wax pot, Bunsen burner, all the way around. And then this will be really replicated like a final denture. And then I'll proceed to make the lower one as well. So what you need is a Bunsen burner, alcohol torch, and make sure your model is prepared with very soaked model to just separate the wax so it comes off the model easily. It'll look like actually a finished denture, but in wax. So I'm being pretty liberal, adding a lot of wax here. Before I've even gone to the base plate wax, I'm going to get my alcohol torch and I'll smooth it out. Now I chose to trim my base plate, take that kind of layer off, the light cure. You could leave it. It's not a good taste for the patient. You're going to wash it anyways, disinfect it before delivery. So I decided to trim it. I may flow some wax over top of this kind of chalky area here that I've trimmed, just to make it look uniform. Naturally, presentation is very key here. So I'm going to now heat up the wax. It's very, very important that the wax is heated to, it's very molten. I don't want the wax tensile strength or the strength of the wax to kind of direct me where it needs to go. Now you could roll the wax. I've seen some people soften the wax and fold it in half. The whole goal here is to eliminate any air entrapment in the wax, so when we are shaping our occlusion rim, we don't have voids. So the density of the rim is consistent. We're not contouring the labial contour and then running into a big, air pocket void in the anterior section and then having to fill it in with molten wax and then showing it discolored. Does that make a difference in the final product? No. But if we're selling this and competing with other laboratories, we need to kind of show a command of the dental material, and that would separate us from our compatriots. So I'm kind of pre-shaping the wax. It's very soft. I'm going to go back now. This is important. I'm going to really create soft wax on the maxillary where I've flowed the wax. So when I adhere my soft wax rolled rim, that adheres to the model and then becomes one and homogeneous. We don't want it to separate from the underlying free-flowed wax. Now I'm keeping in mind here the labial contour generally is around the land area. It's not any more out from that. It has a 10-degree taper in the anterior. Textbook would say, 2, 3, 4 millimeters in the anterior, and then 10 millimeters in the posterior. I'm going to take soft wax here, hot spatula, and now seal the wax that I've added to the seal that I free-flowed earlier, and then maybe even add a little bit onto the palette to reduce that chalky thing from my trimming. And then make sure we don't have any voids. I'm going to heat this all the way down. And like I said, I caution you, this is just one way to make an occlusion rim. Maybe a little bit laborious for some, maybe a little bit too simplistic. Regardless, I think the end result will be more than satisfactory for the practitioner to utilize for those 3 registrations that we talked about. Facebow, transferring the position of the maxilla in relation to the condyles to our articulator. If we don't have a Facebow record, we're going to use average value mounting. Secondary would be the protrusive bite record, so we could program the condylar inclination of our semi-adjustable articulator to help us choose the prosthetic denture teeth to really dictate to us the amount of compensating curve to achieve group function and balanced occlusion. This protrusive measurement for condylar guidance is very important. I'm going to heat the wax here and make sure that the two are together. Now, I haven't really gone and measured anything yet. I'm just doing it by eye, but from experience, I think you can have an idea of what 22 millimeters is, average value of the extent of the maxillary bite block from the labial sulcus. But this protrusive bite record that we're talking about to program our articulator really dictates our setup in the posterior region of the degree of teeth we're going to use and the amount of compensating kerf to utilize, as well as overjet and overbite. If we're going to be concerned and really believe and buy into Hanau's quint of those 5 factors of balanced occlusion. But condylar guidance, I think, dictates this group function rather than the natural dentition canine guided occlusion. I'm going to take my knife here, angle off the posterior section. Now I do this because there's a lot of registrations where we've got the retromolar pad in the back section, and we don't want any interferences to give us some type of erroneous readings of centric relation where there's a touch and a slide. So that's why you can see the angle I've cut that on is not just for aesthetics of the rim, but really creating a functional extent ending of my rim. I don't want any interferences in centric relation records. I can heat up my rim former, which is from, I think originally from Swiss Dent. They created this rim former, or the Hanau rim former. I think they're no-name, some of them now. I don't know if there was a patent on the design. But there's some denture philosophies and courses where you would take the back of your rim and hit the hamular notches and then move it forward. I'm thinking in my technique, I would say trim the base of the model parallel to the ridge parallel to the plane of occlusion, which would be parallel to my mounting, which is parallel to Kemper's plane, which is parallel to the interpupillary line, and therefore giving me a really good chance of only one setup try-in. So I'm going to keep this rim parallel to the base, keeping in mind 22 millimeters. Right here I'm around 24. I still got a couple millimeters to play with, and I'll leave maybe one extra for later. I can turn it occlusally and shape this symmetrically. We know the maxillary ridge shrinks in and down, especially inward here in the anterior, creating my 10-degree anterior buccal labial slope. If we look at some of the earlier rulers, the Hanau ruler, I think I have a Vita one here, but they have an angle cut off for 10 degrees. Here they've got a little frenum cut out on theirs for 22. I mean, if your land area is interfering, that may be a bit of an issue. They've got this 10-degree angle here at the front. But I can estimate an anterior slope here for the dentist. Now he could go, or she could go chairside and create labial contour looking parallel. I'm going to let this wax set. I could quench it. I could air dry it with the compressor if I was in a hurry, but I'm in no hurry because I'm going to move along to the lower one while this one is setting.